welcome to yet another edition of TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahaba Kajur, but first are the headlines. I was breached in Kampala. President Yoweri Museveni insists during the 2021 presidential elections. Clashes between police officers, students in Dhaka on the eve of Sonko trial. Nigeria's outgoing president recommends pay rises. In a sports news today, World Cup trophy, Tour lands in Brazil. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We start with one of our top stories. Now, President Yoweri Museveni has insisted that his votes were changed in Kampala metropolitan area during the 2021 presidential elections. Now, President Yoweri Museveni made the revelations while meeting a section of Kampala NRM village leaders at Kololo Ceremonial Grounds in Kampala on Wednesday.
Commenting on the NRM's performance in Kampala in the recent general elections, President Museveni claimed the party in power was reached out. He blamed the people he appointed in the office of the national chairman for failure to perform their roles, which could have exposed his votes to being changed. President Museveni summoned Hadija Uwizeye, the newly appointed ONC head, to elaborate a report regarding the same. In her report, Uwizeye confirmed that the appointment for agents were made and the amount of money released to cater for the same. It was, however, swindled by those in charge. The ONC was at that time headed by Millie, the current Minister for Presidency, who is coincidentally embroiled in a 7 billion shilling scandal at the government printers.
Moving on, clashes broke out on Wednesday at the University of Dhaka between police officers and students attempting to take part in a demonstration banned by the authorities on the eve of the trial of the opponent, Osman Sonko.
Deployed in mercy around the university, the police sent tear gas in the direction of students locked inside the campus. The students were retaliated with stones but were prevented from leaving. The opposition to President Macky Sall has announced marches and demonstrations in Dhaka and throughout the country on Wednesday, Thursday and Monday. Opposition leader Osman Sonko is due to appear in court in Dhaka on Thursday on charges of defaming a minister. Authorities have banned many of the planned rallies on Wednesday and Thursday, but the main opposition coalition has said it intends to defy the ban. As they prepare to make a statement Wednesday on a major thoroughfare in the capital, leaders of Yewi Askan We coalition dispersed with tear gas by the gendarmerie, according to footage seen by the media.
Thank you so much for your report. We take a quick break. She'll come back with the international news. Welcome back from the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the right to know. In international news today, more than 100 migrants and asylum seekers gathered outside a United Nations building in Tunis on Wednesday, demanding they be repatriated or transferred to another country because of the harassment they say they have suffered in Tunisia.
Most of those gathered were from Sudan and claimed to have been persecuted by Tunisians since President Kais Saied lashed out at sub-Saharan African migrants last month and inveighed against a perceived plot to erase Tunisia's identity. Saddam Abdurrahim, one of the protesters, called on the United Nations and European Union to help migrants like himself leave Tunisia to find another country to settle in. The migrants have been demonstrating outside the UN building for the past 10 days after concerns voiced by Tunisia's Western and African allies. In recent weeks, the Tunisian government has announced a string of new, if limited, measures for sub-Saharan Africans living in Tunisia. They include a hotline for migrants to report any violations of their rights, medical and psychological assistance for all migrants, and new residence cards for students from the other African countries to facilitate their stay on Tunisian soil. Another measure waives fines for sub-Saharan Africans who have exceeded their residency permits if they agree to voluntary return program.
Move on international news. In Nigeria, the outgoing government of President Buhari recommended that the new administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu give civil servants pay rises. Behind the announcement is the long-delayed removal of a fuel subsidy planned for last year. We have more on this report.
Many Nigerians regard subsidized fuel as one of the few benefits provided by the government, which fails to deliver in terms of power and security despite receiving billions of dollars every year from oil exports. The call from the outgoing president piles pressure on the new president-elect to deliver on what was a campaign promise. The president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, on Wednesday disclosed that he cannot afford to squander his mandate as the nation's next president because it was a dream that he spent his life perfecting. Tinubu's sober reflection titled My 71st Birthday Message to Nigerians raised a lot of hope as he vowed not to disappoint Nigerians when it matters most.
Moving on, in international news, the U.S. President Joe Biden on Wednesday urged unity among democracies in the face of Russia and China as he committed nearly $700 million to halt global democratic backsliding and forged an alliance against surveillance technology. We have more.
The U.S. President Joe Biden said this while opening the two-day Second Summit for Democracy organized by the U.S. and co-hosted by Zambia along with South Korea, Costa Rica and Netherlands. Biden invited 121 leaders for his second, largely virtual summit for democracy, including the prime ministers of close U.S. partners Israel and India, who both defended their records after charges of creeping authoritarianism. First conceived by Biden as a way to restore U.S. credibility after Donald Trump's norm-shattering presidency and the attack on the U.S. Capitol, the Summit for Democracy has taken a new urgency as Ukraine fights back a Russian invasion and as China goes on a diplomatic offensive. The summit will work on holding Russia accountable for its unjust and unprovoked war against Ukraine, showing that democracies are strong and resolved, Biden said in brief opening remarks. After criticism that the first summit was too US-focused, Biden tapped leaders on each continent from South Korea, Zambia, Costa Rica, and the Netherlands as co-hosts.
We take a quick break, shall come back with business, health, and sports. Welcome back to the break. You're still watching TV Africa, the Bright Channel. In a business news, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris announced on Wednesday in Ghana a $1 billion initiative to improve women's economic empowerment in Africa as she wrapped up the first leg of her tour of the continent. Now, Harris' office unveiled the program, largely funded by the private sector in the capital, Accra.
Scheduled to last until April 2nd, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's tour of Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia comes on the heels of a December U.S.-Africa summit in Washington, D.C., where President Joe Biden called for a broad partnership with Africa as the U.S. seeks to assert its presence on the continent in the face of growing influence from China and Russia. Harris has already announced several aid packages, including $139 million for economic and culture development in Ghana and a $100 million investment in coastal West African countries facing the risk of spillover jihadist violence from the Sahel. The African Women's Economic Empowerment Initiative includes nearly $400 billion from the private sector to help bridge the gender digital divide. More than $500 million again from the private sector will also be used to support women's economic empowerment in Africa, the statement said.
In a health news today, scientists in the United States are using Asian DNA to reveal the stories of 36 people who were buried in unmarked graves in Charleston, South Carolina.
Situated on the east coast, it's believed that over 40% of all enslaved Africans passed through the city's port. It was the largest point of disembarkation in North America during the transatlantic slave trade. The site on Anson Street was discovered in 2013 as construction workers dug foundations for a new arts center. Since then, scientists have learned more about these people and their lives by pulling genetic material from their remains. According to biological anthropologist Flex of the University of Connecticut, the chemical signatures of the bone indicated that 6 individuals were likely born in Africa and the rest were likely born outside of Africa, in Charleston or in North America. The region is littered with the unmarked graves of these enslaved people, but most of their names and stories have been lost to time. Community members have also submitted DNA samples, hoping to find a personal connection to one of the ancestors. In 2019, the ancestors' remains were reburied at the site during a traditional Yoruba naming ceremony.
In a sports news today, after visits to Morocco and South Africa, the World Cup Trophy Tour landed in Brazil, one of the favorites to win this year's tournament. The event was attended by legends of women's football such as former Brazil player Formiga.
According to former Brazil player Mirails Mota, known as Formiga, she hoped that the girls can perform good football and take the trophy to Brazil since they have been so close to it. The coveted Golden Trophy started its tour of the African continent in Morocco's capital city of Rabat before moving to reigning African champion South Africa, Zambia's capital of Lusaka, and ending in Nigeria's capital Abuja. Morocco, Zambia, Nigeria, and African champion South Africa have all qualified for the event hosted in Australia and New Zealand starting on July 20th.
It is at this particular time that I thank you for being with us and always joining us. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you. It is TV Africa, the right to know.